CEO Dave Miller built his empire from sleepless nights and a broken heart. 8 years have passed since the love of his life vanished, leaving behind nothing but a single, haunting note. Don't look for me. In the dazzling skyline of his achievements, every gleaming glass tower and sprawling corporate headquarters serves as a testament to his unyielding drive and to the pain that fueled his ambition. Haunted by memories of a past filled with promise and shattered dreams, Dave poured his anguish into relentless work, transforming despair into a formidable business legacy. His days blurred into nights as he navigated high-stakes deals and boardroom battles, each decision a quiet rebellion against the void left by her departure. The ghost of that lost love lingered in every corner of his success, a bittersweet reminder that every triumph was born from the depths of personal tragedy. Yet behind his steely exterior and polished reputation, there remained a man grappling with unresolved questions and a heart that still ached. In the silence of midnight, when the city's pulse slowed, the echo of her absence stirred a longing for answers. A yearning to understand why the one who once promised forever had chosen to disappear. Nina stepped into Dave's office, her graceful presence infusing the room with energy. She found him standing by the window, his gaze fixed on the cityscape as if he were lost in memories of a past that refused to fade. Though she recognized the faraway look in his eyes, she chose not to remark on it, instead focusing on the moment at hand. "Dave, it's time," she said softly, a gentle reminder that the evening awaited. "The company gala is about to begin." Her words stirred him from his reverie, and he slowly turned away, forcing a smile that barely concealed the weight of his inner turmoil. As they entered the gala, the vibrant atmosphere enveloped them, a stark contrast to the solitude of his thoughts. Nina effortlessly mingled with colleagues and dignitaries alike, her conversational charm smoothing over any awkward pauses. She laughed warmly, drawing people into her orbit, while Dave moved through the crowd with measured steps. Despite the bright lights and cheerful chatter, his mind remained adrift, haunted by echoes of lost love. Yet as the night advanced, even the forced smile on his face could not entirely mask the longing that continued to shape his every moment. At the end of the night, Dave drove Nina home, and though she warmly invited him inside, he quietly declined. Something deep inside urged him to seek the solitude of his past rather than settle into the familiar comfort of the present. Instead, he climbed back into his car and set off through the winding streets of Amanda's old neighborhood, a place that held echoes of a time when the world was simpler and love burned bright. As he drove, he couldn't help but notice how much had changed. Familiar storefronts had vanished, replaced by modern facades, and the once vibrant murals on brick walls were now mere memories faded by time. Eventually, his restless heart steered him to a local diner from his youth, its neon sign flickering like a beacon calling him back. Inside, in a quiet corner bathed in soft light, he spotted a woman engrossed in a book. There she sat, seemingly lost in her own world. Yet her presence stirred a torrent of old emotions. In that silent moment, Dave felt the weight of unspoken memories and lost chances, as the gentle rustle of turning pages reminded him of a love he once thought was forever. Speechless, Dave walked over to her, the soft hum of the diner fading into the background as his presence loomed closer. Deep in her book, she was startled by the sudden interruption and slowly looked up, eyes widening in shock. For a long moment, silence reigned between them. Dave wanted answers, to understand why this familiar stranger stirred echoes of his past, but all he managed was a simple, tentative greeting. Their conversation unfolded in a series of awkward exchanges, laden with the unspoken weight of old memories and unresolved questions. Each word felt clumsy, as if they were navigating a delicate dance between familiarity and estrangement. Just as the fragile bridge between them began to form, the shrill sound of an alarm from her phone shattered the moment. "I have to go," she said quickly, gathering her things with an air of urgency that left little room for further dialogue. In a final bid to reconnect, Dave asked, almost pleadingly, "Could we meet again for coffee?" She paused, then softly replied, "No, my life is complicated, and you'd only add to it." With that, she left him standing there, a mix of regret and longing in his eyes as the door swung shut, leaving him to wonder about the lost chances of a reconnection that might have mended old scars. Dave couldn't shake the restlessness that had gripped him all night. At daybreak, the dim light filtering through the window, he reached for his phone and called Miles. "I need every scrap of information you can find on Amanda Whitmore. Now," he demanded, his voice edged with urgency and desperation. The request left no room for error. Amanda had to be unearthed from the shadows of his past. Before Miles could reply, Nina breezed into his office, radiant and bubbling with excitement. "The gala was a hit," she exclaimed, her tone laced with triumph as she recounted the evening's sparkling moments. But Dave's thoughts were a whirlwind of memories and questions. Her cheerfulness clashed with the dark storm inside him, and frustration flashed across her face. "Dave, you need to pull yourself together. I've been waiting for a year, and we still haven't taken the next step. Why can't you focus?" she chided, her words sharp with impatience. Something in Dave snapped. He fixed Nina with an intense stare and asked, "Why do you really want to marry me?" Nina hesitated before listing reasons: a stable future, shared history, the security of a partnership, but none of her justifications held the warmth of love. Her brow furrowed as she retorted, "And why did you ask?" With a half smile, Dave replied, "I'm just wondering if we're on the same page." When she pressed further, asking, "Where are we, really?" he simply smiled, a silent affirmation of his inner disarray. Nina, exhausted by Dave's behavior, decided to leave. Just as she walked down the hallway, Miles reappeared with a thick file clutched in his hand. "Sir, here's the full report on Amanda, from her childhood up to now." Dave flipped through the pages. As the revelations unfolded before him, he was left utterly speechless. The shocking truth about Amanda etching a deep, irreparable mark on his heart. Dave tells Miles no one has ever seen these files. Dave's heart pounded as he sifted through the newly uncovered details. After making more calls, he learned that Amanda had been receiving a steady $20,000 into her account every year for the past 8 years, and yet, not a single penny had been spent. The mystery deepened. Who was behind these consistent payments, and why was the money left untouched? His curiosity only grew when he discovered records showing that Amanda had been hospitalized briefly 7 years ago. Oddly enough, the very same company that had been depositing funds also covered her hospital expenses, yet there was no official record explaining the reason for her admission. With a sense of urgency, Dave contacted a trusted private investigator, instructing him to delve into Amanda's financial history and the obscure origins of the funds. The investigator was tasked with piecing together the enigmatic trail, from the hospital records to the company responsible for the payments. As Dave watched the case unfold, he felt a growing determination to understand the forces that shaped Amanda's secret life. Every unanswered question, every unexplained detail, only served to intensify the mystery that now consumed him. A mystery that might ultimately reveal why Amanda, once so pivotal to his past, was still shrouded in elusive secrets. That night, Dave returned to the same diner, clutching onto a fragile hope that she might appear. The neon lights flickered as he sat at a familiar booth, his eyes scanning every corner. Hours passed, and despite his desperate anticipation, she never came. The empty chair across from him served as a painful reminder of lost chances, leaving him with an aching uncertainty that lingered long into the night. In the following days, Dave threw himself into work, desperate to distract himself from the magnetic pull of memories and unanswered questions. Yet, beneath his busy facade, a restless agitation simmered. Nina, ever perceptive, noticed the change in his demeanor. One evening, her worry mixed with frustration, she ascended to Dave's penthouse and began searching through his belongings. It wasn't long before she discovered the file on Amanda. Pages filled with meticulous details and hints of a secret past. Though Nina had long accepted their unspoken agreement, The evidence made it painfully clear that Dave was grappling with something far deeper than he let on. A week later, on a quiet Sunday morning, the private investigator finally delivered his report. Dave sat alone at his office desk, the early light barely filtering through the blinds. With trembling hands, he leafed through the document. Every detail, from Amanda's unexplained hospitalization to the consistent $20,000 deposits and the obscure origins of her funds, struck him like a thunderbolt. Dave was left speechless, his mind overwhelmed by revelations that blurred the line between his past and present. That same Sunday morning, Amanda's day began with a knock at her door. Opening it, she was met by Nina's stern gaze. "Stay away from Dave," Nina warned, her tone firm. "We had an agreement, you're not to have any contact with him." Shock and confusion rippled across Amanda's face, and before she could respond, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Dave, who had been haunted by his own discoveries, walked in on the confrontation. The room fell into a heavy silence as Dave absorbed Nina's words. Nina, caught off guard by his sudden appearance, tried to justify her actions. Nina said, her voice softening with concern, "Dave, we all know what happened before. If you get involved with Amanda again, she will just hurt you again. I'm protecting you from her." The tension in the room was palpable, a collision of old wounds and new fears, as Dave realized that the tangled web of secrets was now pulling everyone into a storm of uncertainty. Dave's eyes hardened as he met Nina's gaze. "Are you sure about that?" he demanded, his voice low and trembling with barely contained anger. "According to these records, your father's shell company has been keeping me from her and from my son, the son I never knew I had." The shock in his words was heavily in the room, punctuating the silence that followed. Nina's expression shifted, a mixture of resignation and bitterness crossing her features. "She was just a distraction," Nina replied, her tone even but laced with an undercurrent of regret. "You and I were always supposed to be together. Our families made an agreement when we were babies, a promise that was meant to secure our future together." Nina's confession seemed to echo around the room, as if the very walls were witness to decades of hidden truths. Dave's mind raced, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. "So all these years, while I was chasing ghosts and secrets, I was being kept apart from a part of my own life?" he asked, voice rough with disbelief. The report lay in silent testament to years of manipulation and lost opportunities. Every detail now formed a mosaic of betrayal that stung deeper than any corporate setback. Nina continued, her eyes softening for a fleeting moment. "I know it sounds harsh, Dave, but our families thought they were protecting us, ensuring we fulfilled a destiny written for us long before we could choose our own paths." Her voice wavered as she added, "I believed that by keeping you focused elsewhere, I could help you avoid a pain you weren't ready to face." The air between them grew thick with tension and sorrow as Dave struggled to reconcile the past with the present. In that quiet moment, the promise of destiny clashed violently with the reality of lost years. A future now tangled in secrets, lies, and the haunting call of what might have been. Dave's anger exploded as he glared at Nina. "For 8 years you watched me suffer, every step filled with hurt and loss, and you didn't care about the toll it took on me." He spat. "You knew I was still in love with Amanda. You knew about my son. I lost 7 years of happiness and love. I can't get back the time you stole from me," his voice raw with emotion. "You deceived me, pushed me toward a marriage I wasn't ready for. And why, Nina? You forced this on me. You never cared for me at all." His words echoed harshly in the quiet room, each accusation striking like a dagger. Nina's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she tried to steady herself. "Dave, I never meant to hurt you," she began, her voice soft yet laced with desperation. "I thought I was protecting you, protecting us, from a past that was tearing you apart. I believed our family's plan was our destiny, a way to give you stability. I wasn't trying to replace Amanda. I was trying to help you heal, to guide you toward a future where you wouldn't be haunted by loss." Dave's gaze didn't soften. "Guiding me? or trapping me in a life where my pain is ignored. Not once did you show me real love during my grief, he countered bitterly. The air between them crackled with unresolved emotions as Nina struggled to justify her choices, knowing that every word only deepened the chasm between them. Not know what to say, Nina ran out the room. Dave crashed again the front door, overwhelmed with uncontrollable emotions. Amanda walked over and placed her arms around him and laid her head on his shoulders. After a long while, she let go and headed over to her son. Dave turned to see Amanda, tears streaming down her face as she cradled a small boy in her arms. Jason, whose wide, curious eyes reflected both fear and hope. Without hesitation, Dave stepped forward and asked, "Amanda, can we talk?" Her gaze met his, a mix of sorrow and relief shimmering in the dim light of the room. With a trembling voice, Amanda introduced Jason. "This is your father." Jason looked up at Dave, his small voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "I've always known about you, Mom. Mom has photos of you two. She told me that my dad loves me even if he doesn't know me. When I was smaller at bedtime, Mother Stores would say, when it was safe, your dad would come, after the Ice Queen and old troll is destroyed." The word struck Dave like a tidal wave. He had spent years entangled in secrets and regrets, never imagining that his absence would leave such an indelible mark on a child's life. They settled in a quiet corner of the room, as Amanda explained how she had carefully shielded Jason from the turmoil of her past. Every decision had been made with his safety in mind, with the promise that one day, when circumstances allowed, he would finally meet the father he had longed for. Dave listened intently, his heart heavy with guilt and longing. As Jason recalled snippets of his childhood, moments when he wondered about the missing piece of his family, Dave felt the weight of lost time bearing down on him. Their conversation slowly shifted to Jason's upbringing, his days at school, his dreams, and the small victories that had colored his young life. In that vulnerable exchange, Dave realized that even after years of separation, there remained a chance to forge a new bond, a chance to mend the broken fragments of a family torn apart by secrets and circumstance. Dave's gaze locked onto Amanda's tear-streaked face as the dam of his pent-up pain finally broke free. "I've been hurting for years," he said, his voice thick with anguish. "I never understood why you left when I knew we were in love. I was left to wander through darkness, desperately searching for answers that never came." Amanda's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she reached out and squeezed his hand. "Dave, I never stopped loving you," she whispered, her tone laden with regret. "But after college, everything changed. Nina appeared immediately after our graduation and shattered everything I believed in. She told me that your family had arranged for you two to be together, a decision made when you all were just babies, meant to secure our futures." Dave's heart pounded in disbelief. "Nina? Did you tell Dave about this arrangement?" Amanda's voice trembled as she recalled the painful memories. "I confronted her, desperate for clarity. Instead, Nina insisted it was for your own good, that you were destined to be with her. She warned me that if I didn't leave you, she would use a secret against me. She even produced fake photos, showing me with another man during our relationship, twisting the truth into something I couldn't bear. And when I told her I was pregnant, she just laughed, said that was even better." The raw mix of betrayal and sorrow filled the space between them, each revelation cutting deeper than the last. In that heart-wrenching moment, their shared past, tainted by manipulation and enforced separation, stood bare, leaving wounds that might never fully heal. Dave's eyes softened as he took a steadying breath, the weight of years of pain and regret mingling with a newfound resolve. "Amanda," he began, his voice low yet earnest, "how do we move forward from here? I've spent so long aching for answers, for a chance to mend what was broken. I want to take care of you and of Jason. When you're ready, I'd like for both of you to move in with me to finally be part of a family that's been incomplete for too long." He paused, his gaze never leaving hers as he continued. "I understand if you need time, if you're not yet ready to accept what I'm offering. But please know, I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. Our hearts, have been bruised by secrets and enforced separations, yet I believe there's still a future waiting for us." He leaned forward, his voice trembling with a mixture of vulnerability and determination. "I've spent years wandering through darkness, not knowing why we were torn apart. I now see that every moment of hurt was a step that led me back to you, back to the son I never thought I'd have. I want nothing more than to be a part of your lives again, to share in your joys and shoulder your burdens. If you ever decide that the time is right, know that I'll be here, ready to welcome you both home. We can start rebuilding, slowly, gently, and create a family where love, not secrets, defines us." That evening, Dave took the stage and made a statement that reverberated far beyond the boardroom and glossy magazine covers. In a live press conference, he stood tall, his eyes scanning the sea of reporters and flashing cameras, and declared, "I have a son." His voice, both pained and determined, cut through the air as he continued. "For too long, my life was shrouded in secrets that were kept from me by Nina and her family." With each carefully chosen word, Dave peeled back years of deception, revealing a truth he'd long struggled to accept. "I don't know if Nina's reasoning is true, especially since my own parents passed away years ago. But what I do know is that I refuse to be manipulated any longer. I am cutting all ties with her family and focusing on my new family, Amanda and my son, Jason." Even before the announcement, Dave had anticipated the fallout. Aware that Nina might try to discredit him and target Amanda as a way to salvage her own narrative, he had already arranged for a private interview. In that interview, Amanda's side of their shared story was told with raw honesty, a story of love, heartbreak, and the insidious interference of forces beyond their control. The interview was set to be released later that night, offering the public an unvarnished glimpse into a love that had been systematically suppressed. As Dave's words echoed through the press room, the atmosphere shifted. The public, investors, and media all began to grasp the magnitude of the betrayal. The carefully constructed facade was crumbling, replaced by the unyielding truth of his family's story. Reporters bombarded him with questions about the details, about the mysterious past that had kept Jason hidden for so long. Dave answered each one with measured candor, his tone unwavering as he asserted that his sole focus was now on rebuilding a life of integrity and love with Amanda and Jason. Nina, realizing that her carefully orchestrated plans were unraveling and fearing the inevitable public backlash, made a swift decision. In the hush of the early hours, she quietly left the country, erasing her presence as though she had never been part of his life. Her departure sent a clear message. The days of manipulation were over. With the private interview now set to air and the public aware of the truth, Dave felt a cautious optimism rising within him. For the first time in years, he was ready to step out of the shadows of deceit and into a future defined by honesty and genuine connection. The long-hidden secrets were finally coming to light, paving the way for healing and the possibility of a new beginning, a future where family was cherished and truth reigned supreme. In the gentle glow of twilight, the night of the proposal unfolded with quiet intimacy. Dave had arranged a special dinner at home for Amanda and Jason. The living room was softly lit by flickering candles, and a delicate melody played in the background, setting a peaceful tone. As they savored the comforting meal, the air filled with anticipation. After dessert, Dave led Amanda to a secluded corner where memories of their journey, both painful and joyful, lingered in every shared glance. With his heart pounding, he took her hand and spoke of the years lost, the heartache endured, and the hope that had slowly rekindled between them. Then, dropping to one knee, he looked deeply into her eyes and asked, "Will you marry me?" In that suspended moment, Amanda's smile lit up the room as she whispered a heartfelt yes. Even young Jason, watching from the side, seemed to sense that their family was finally becoming whole. Their happiness wouldn't last long. While Dave, Amanda, and little Jason were beginning to embrace the promise of a renewed future, An insidious storm was brewing behind the scenes, a storm orchestrated by Nina's father, Matthew Baxter. Before Nina could flee the country to escape the mounting pressure, she felt compelled to confront the man who had always controlled her destiny. In the dim light of his stately study, Nina paced the room, her heart pounding in a mix of dread and defiance. The plush carpet muffled her steps as she struggled to process the betrayal that had unfolded. Her father, Matthew Baxter, sat behind a massive mahogany desk, his expression unreadable yet radiating cold authority. Finally, he spoke in a tone that brooked no argument. "After I saw Dave drag his feet with you," Matthew began, his voice low and measured, "I decided it was time to put my plan into action." He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with a predatory light. "5 years ago, I started buying shares of the company. Now I have half of the board on my side. I can push him out and seize control." Nina's breath caught in her throat. Shock and disbelief warred within her. "How long have you been planning to steal the company?" she demanded, her voice trembling as she struggled to mask her outrage. Matthew's gaze remained fixed on a point beyond the window, as if he could see the future unfolding before him. "Ever since Dave's parents died in that car accident," he replied coolly. "That tragedy provided the perfect opening to acquire what was rightfully mine." Desperation flashed in Nina's eyes as she pressed further. "So, am I just a part of your plan? Or was I supposed to be with him as well?" A slight smile played on Matthew's lips, devoid of any genuine warmth. "I had to get you aboard to get inside," he stated bluntly, as though revealing a simple fact rather than admitting a lifetime of manipulation. Overwhelmed and physically shaken, Nina could no longer contain her fury and disillusionment. With a heavy heart, she gathered her few personal belongings, the weight of betrayal evident in every movement, and left for Europe that very night, escaping to seek solace far from her father's poisonous influence. Back at his headquarters, Matthew wasted no time. He called an emergency board meeting, the room filled with tense whispers and furrowed brows as he outlined a bold strategy to remove Dave from his position permanently. Unbeknownst to Matthew, however, Dave had caught wind of the secret stock acquisitions. The revelation that his trusted in-laws had been manipulating the company behind his back left him no choice but to brace for the inevitable clash. As the boardroom simmered with tension, Dave prepared himself for the battle ahead. A battle that wasn't just for corporate control, but for the integrity of his family and his own future. Little did Matthew know that Dave's resolve had been hardened by years of betrayal and heartache, and that he was ready to fight back with every ounce of determination he possessed. Matthew Baxter had never suspected that a quiet force of private investors, long detached from daily operations, would turn the tide against him. Over the past months, Dave had meticulously amended the company bylaws so that any leadership change required the affirmative vote of all major investors, a safeguard against secretive coups. When the emergency board meeting was called, Dave entered the boardroom accompanied by 12 silent members, beside those who ran the day-to-day operation. The 12 silent board members whose presence sent an unmistakable message of unity and resolve. As the heavy oak doors swung open, Matthew's confident facade began to crack. He sat at the head of the table, expecting routine updates and perhaps a few minor adjustments to corporate strategy. Instead, he was met with a sea of determined faces, their silence speaking volumes. Dave's measured stride and unwavering gaze silenced the murmurs even before he began. "Matthew," Dave started, his tone calm yet laced with authority. "It appears you underestimated the power of truth and the unity of our investors." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room as Dave continued, methodically laying out the damning evidence against Matthew. He detailed how Matthew had orchestrated a clandestine scheme to oust him by fabricating false reports and misrepresenting financial figures. The tension in the room mounted with every word, the air thick with anticipation. Dave then revealed a particularly damning piece of evidence. "I received a call from Nina," he announced, pausing to let the silence amplify his words, in which she confided that her father had been planning this takeover for years. His backup plan was set in motion just in case I didn't marry his daughter. The revelation cut through the room like a knife. Shocked expressions turned to disbelief as Matthew's carefully constructed plans began to unravel before him. You see, Dave continued, any major leadership changes must secure the votes of all major investors, a rule that you have attempted to circumvent with your false reports and deceit. With a final, deliberate motion, Dave called for a vote. One by one, the silent board members signaled their approval. Matthew Baxter had lost his grip on power. His schemes had been exposed, and he was removed from the building. As the boardroom emptied, Dave remained seated for a moment longer, his expression a mixture of solemn resolve and cautious optimism. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but with the support of the private investors and the reformed board, he was determined to steer the company back on course. A few months later, their wedding day arrived like a burst of spring. The ceremony was set in a charming garden adorned with clusters of vibrant blooms and trailing ivy. Amanda, radiant in a flowing gown, walked gracefully down an aisle scattered with rose petals, her eyes never leaving Dave's. Standing beneath a floral arch, Dave awaited her with an expression of profound love and relief. The couple exchanged vows that spoke of resilience, forgiveness, and the promise of new beginnings, their words mingling with soft laughter and gentle tears. The reception that followed was a jubilant celebration filled with heartfelt toasts, dancing beneath twinkling fairy lights, and the warm embrace of family and friends. The day was a testament to overcoming past shadows and embracing a future defined by love. A new chapter for a family that had finally found its way back to each other. Thank you for listening to Green Tea Tale. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.